Assalamualaikum everyone. I am Manahil Marjawali. I am from Karachi, Pakistan. I am a student of Rehan School Kringi campus. I am thrilled to be here with all of you today. And we have a very special guest with us, someone who is absolute trailblazer in the world for podcasting and online education. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our guest. He is absolutely amazing. We are thrilled to have you here, and we are eager to learn more about you. So let's dive right in. So welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, sir. So first of all, please introduce yourself for my viewers.
My name's Scott Paton, and I'm a podcast producer. I've been producing podcasts since 2005, and I've also produced courses. So I use udemy.com, and I've produced over 140 courses, I believe, over the last 6 years, and have a 500,000 students there. And in addition, I'm president of a website called free-ebooks.net, where you can get free ebooks, 5 free ebooks a month, and no strings attached. So if you're looking for textbooks, for example, we have a lot of excellent textbooks. They may be a year or two out of date, but a lot of people use them when they go to university or college.
All right, sir. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, sir, for your introduction. So now let's move on to questions. My first question is on your screen. Can you tell us about your journey into podcasting and what inspired you to start in 2005?
I can. I had a huge resistance to podcasting. Uh, Prior to learning about podcasting, I was trying to figure out how to blog. And it took me 3 months, was incredibly frustrating. And when I finally figured it out, I was delighted. And I thought, I don't want to go through that process again because I'd been hearing about podcasting and I said, I am not touching it. But then I was working for the Internet Marketing Center at the time, and they asked me to take what I had learned about podcasting and turn it into a course and also go to their workshops and talk about it for 2 hours. And I knew I could talk about podcasting, blogging for an hour without boring everybody, but 2 hours, I figured I would have everybody sound asleep. So I thought, what else could I talk about? And podcasting was the obvious choice. And I didn't realize how close they were. You know, they're very, very close in terms. One is just text and one is audio, and that's about the only difference. And it took me about 10 minutes to get my podcast up and running. And I thought, oh, this is easy. But I had built that easiness off of the knowledge of 3 months of hard work trying to figure out blogging. So, and of course, now blogging is very, very simple. In 2005, it was a pretty complex thing. So that's how I got started on the podcasting. And then I didn't want to do a video. So everything I've done has had huge resistance. I didn't want to do it. I did not want to do a video course, but a friend of mine asked me to speak to his marketing department about podcasting. And afterwards, he grabbed me by the shirt and said, you have to do a course. You have to do a video course on this. And I said, well, I have a 3-page PDF. That should be enough. And he said, no, do a video course. And so I spent the next 3 months creating my podcasting course, looking for a place to put it. I decided on Udemy. And then I thought, wow, like this is an interesting site, and told some of my friends and started helping them make courses. And that's how that sort of all evolved. For some reason, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. That's awesome. Thank you so much for your answer. So now let's move on to next question. My next question is on your screen. Uh, You've been involved in our 45 podcast as an executive producer and co-host. Could you share a few memorable moments from your podcasting career?
I think probably the most memorial, memorable moment from my podcasts have been when we've had feedback from people who basically say, "You've changed my life. I didn't know this or I didn't know that," and it's really made a huge difference. And that's a lot in the business podcast, and also I did a health podcast for almost 10 years. And a lot of times people will have some problem and they think they're alone, and we talk about it, they realize they're not alone, and it just gives them inspiration and motivation to continue. So that would be my, like, my favorite, best one. My worst one was when I forgot to hit record. And there's nothing like talking to somebody for a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then realizing that there's nothing recorded. So I remember I only did it twice, and I remember both of them very vividly.
All right, sir. Wonderful answer. Thank you so much, sir, for your answer. So, my next question is how do you approach public engagement strategies? And can you give an example of an organization or individual that benefit from your insights?
The way I approach public engagement is taking a stand. I think too often everybody tries to be everything to everyone, and we all have our values. Some are the same, some are different. Doesn't not not one is better or worse than the other. It's just what it is. And I think that when people are getting into business, they try to appeal to everybody, which means they appeal to no one. So I think when it comes to public engagement, you know, really take a look at yourself. What are your values? What do you stand for? What's important? People like to do business or want to do business with people that they like, know, and trust, or know, like, and trust. So the first part of public engagement is, here I am, right? This is what I'm about, sort of thing. And then, how do you show your trustworthiness, and how do you get them to like you? And the thing is that, and we see this on Instagram all the time, is people will post, all you haters go away, right? Like, there's always people that aren't going to like you. So get over it is the first thing. And then just find, like, if there's 7 billion people on the world, there can be a few hundred or a few thousand or a few 100,000 people that like you out of those people. And that's your tribe. That's your group. That's your audience. And that's what you need to do, is say, okay, these are my values. This is what I stand for. This is what's important to me. And those change over the years, right? Like, when my sons were babies, my values are very different than when they're 30-year-olds, and when they're having babies. And though I have grandchildren, the way we look at life, or the way I look at life, is far different. So your values and what's important to you changes over time, and your audience is going to follow you through those changes. I think oftentimes people are afraid to, I don't want to say they're afraid to express anger, because we see that on the news all the time. But when we're talking about our social media engagement and that sort of thing, they're not, something, it could be someone cut you off driving, or it could be someone did something on the bus which you were on, or it could be you were in a store and somebody did something you didn't like, and we just stuff it down. Whereas if we just say, you know what, I saw this, I think this behavior is terrible, or I saw this and I think this behavior is amazing. Like, I saw a video the other day, this old lady with a walker's crossing the street, and it's a busy street and there's no lights. It's a crosswalk, nobody's stopping. And this car stops, and these two guys get out, they run around. One grabs her and carries her across, because she's very small, and the other grabs her walker, carries it across. And it was just a wonderful thing, and all the traffic stopped for them. So there are lots of, we focus a lot on the negative, but you can also focus on the positive. What are the feel good stories, and share those, because people need to be inspired and motivated as much as they need the rants, right? So oftentimes when I say take a stand, it sounds like, I'm mad about this and talk about that, but it's also, I'm really happy about something, right? and you share those stories too. And and I think that's the biggest part of social engagement, is just sharing who you are, being more of who you are, and sharing that, right? And understanding that it changes. And when it changes, you'll have some people that don't like it, and they'll tell you. And it's like, too bad, because this is where I am. And I'm reminded of a, a rock band in the United States, and they did a ballad. So in other words, it's all this loud banging noise music, and and then all of a sudden they do this really soft ballad. It was beautiful, but three-quarters of their audience hated it because it wasn't the music that they were used to. And that became a huge hit, and it's remained a hit and a popular song ever since. But they took a risk, and they got the backlash, and it didn't matter because their audience didn't disappear. It was just they had that reaction. So I think be brave and share what you think.
Alright, sir. Thank you so much for giving us great answer. Your answer is so awesome. Thank you so much for your answer. So my next question is, what
What I find
a
most
student
re-
from 119 taking a courses Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay,
Um,
my question is, can I ask?
yes, go ahead.
Okay, with over 6,400, oh sorry, 6,400, 400,500 students from 199 countries taking your courses, what do you find most rewarding about online teaching?
It's really my students' success. When my students message me and they say, I took your course and I've got my podcast up and it's doing this and it's doing that, it just really warms my heart. And then in the other courses, they're not all on podcasting, they're all on different topics depending on the co-instructors. It's the same thing. We've had one of the courses that I did was on personal development, and it's called an EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. And it's basically, if you're anxious about something, or you have a problem, like an emotional problem, and it's tap here, tap here, tap here, tap here, tap here, tap here, and it makes it's like, it sounds weird if you have never done it, but it makes a huge difference. And the instructor, her focus was on people who pull their hair out. And I'd never heard of that, but like teenage girls and young women and even some older ones, they're anxious, and the way that they get over it is they just pull, and then they have a big bald spot. So it's something they shouldn't be doing. And one young man emailed us and said, I've always been pulling my hair out. I have these bald spots, and I took your course and I'm practicing what you taught me. And instead of pulling out my hair 20 times a day, I just did it once today. And I'm so happy because I know that I'm going to get it to once a week and then once a month and then never ever doing it again. And your course really has changed my life. So those sort of stories happen all the time, and they're just wonderful, and make me very happy.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, sir, for your answer. So my next question is on your screen. What motivated you to start creating courses on Udemy, particularly on podcasting?
Well, what motivated me was um, really my friend telling me that I have to step up and teach it in a more modern way, because I had a way of teaching that was 15 years old, or I guess 8 years old, and not as effective. Technology changes, so keeping up with the technology. And I wanted to get the courses out so that people would, experience them and have the benefit of the courses. And I didn't want to spend time doing it all myself. I knew that video hosting was a challenge, because I didn't know how to do it. Getting an audience was a challenge because anytime you start anything from nothing, it's a challenge. But I saw Udemy as a place where I could just upload my videos and not have to worry, and also a place where they had millions of students. And at that time, they were growing very fast, which made a big difference. So if you can find a market or a site that's growing really fast, lots of people are coming to it, and then you can just sort of put your content there, it just grows with it. And that's really what happened with me. I think it would be harder now to get that many students because there's so many more people doing courses on all different types of topics, not just podcasting. But I think too, it's just a matter of putting the information out there that you've got. I think everybody should have courses. Like everybody knows something, that's unique. And it's not just the knowledge, it's also you, like how you present is unique. So people might not listen to me, but they'll listen to you, sort of thing, right? So if you and I are both podcasting, we have similar audiences, but not the same. And so, because a lot of people will say, well, there's so many courses on Udemy or some other sites, it's saturated, I shouldn't do it. And I think, no, like there are people that will gravitate to you and your personality, and they need to hear your stories and your training and your teachings, and everybody should be doing it. Obviously everybody's not going to do it, but I think everybody should.
All right, great answer. Thank you so much, sir, for your answer. So now let's move on to next question. My next question is, as an elder nomad explorer, how has your love for travel influenced your work and perspective on podcasting?
Thank you for that question. Um, when I first, like, I didn't start traveling until my two sons were um, out of the house. So what we call an empty nester. So they had their own lives, they had their own homes. And so I thought, I can do whatever I want now. What do I want to do? And I wanted to travel. So I actually flew to Morocco, and then spent 2 years in North Africa and Europe before coming back to North America and South America. Um, I I think, and I have no desire to settle down either. Like I really am. Like I want to go to Africa next year, and I want to go to Pakistan. I have some friends there that keep sending me pictures of how beautiful Pakistan is, and other countries, and Australia, and so there's just like this big world. I still want to explore it. Uh, but I think what happens is when you're living the life that you desire and is congruent with your soul, if you want to put it that way, or what you're supposed to be doing, then life is good. Life is happy. You're content. There are obviously challenges and stuff that happen, as it doesn't matter what you're doing, whether you're staying in the same place or going to different places. And I thought the biggest challenge would be scheduling, like being able to um, you know be on your show, for example, and that sort of thing. And it's just a matter of having a good calendar and keeping everything there so that I don't forget anything, and just deciding how you want to live your life and then working towards it. I had a friend of mine about a year ago message me and say, "I'm so happy for you because you're living the life that you always wanted to live," and referring to travel. And I thought, she's right, but how does she know? So I said, like, "You're right. How do you know? Like, why did you say that?" And she says, "Oh, 20 years ago when we were talking, you were always talking about traveling and how you wanted to do what you're doing now. And it's just so nice to see it." And the point of that is you may want to do something, but the timing may not be right. We have the seasons of the year, we have the spring and planting and the tending of the garden in the summer, and then the harvesting in the fall. And life is like that too. So those years that I was telling her what I wanted to do were years where I had my sons living with me and I was raising them. Well, that's not a good time to go tramping across the planet, because they need me. And then as they grew up and matured and everything else, they got on their own and they're happy and they're healthy and they have good jobs. So I don't have to worry about them. And so now I can do, my responsibilities are not at an end, but they're far less. So and now I concentrate on being a good grandpa as well as a good father. So um, oftentimes people will tell me, "Oh, I really want to do what you're doing," or "I really want to do something." And I ask them a couple questions, and usually it's, "This is not the time. This is not the season for you to do this. Don't be impatient." Right? Time goes too fast. You'll have your opportunity, but right now you set your life up and you've got this and that going on, and those are your responsibilities, and you need to just accept it, go through that process, whatever it is. Like in my case, it was raising my sons, but in other people's cases, it could be some totally other thing. Um, and then you have to set your life up for what you want. So as I was going through, as I was going through that time where I was raising my children, I was also setting myself up to have a business where I didn't need to be in one place. So if I had a grocery store, I can't do what I'm doing right now, right? So you have to look at your life and say, where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And also, what changes do I have to make in order for that to happen, right? And it could be going to school and getting a special education of some sort. It could be, I mean, I don't know what in my case, it was, you know, getting my kids raised properly and being healthy and having jobs and being okay so that I can go and travel. And, with technology today, I can Zoom with them or talk to them, phone them and send messages and all the rest of it. So it doesn't feel like the first time I traveled, which was in the 1970s, and I would send a postcard to my dad and he would get it like 2 weeks later. So he didn't know where I was and he knew that once he got the postcard that I was somewhere else because 2 weeks had gone by. So the technology really makes it easier to do what I'm doing now than it was, 40 or 60 years ago.
Yes, sir, you are right. Thank you so much for your answer. That's wonderful answer. Thank you so much. So my next question is, what advice could you offer to individuals aspiring to start their own podcast, career, online courses?
Well, the first thing I would say is there are many reasons not to do it. So don't pay attention to them. Right? Like, oh, I don't have a microphone, or my camera's not very good, or I don't speak very well, or it just goes on and on and on. And it was kind of like, you have to do. The more you do, the better you get. So everybody will do a podcast and they'll publish it. And a year later, if they listen to it and they've been doing podcasts all year, all right, they'll say that was really bad. And it doesn't matter how good you are, because we're constantly improving. And the more practice that you do, the faster you improve. And then we look on stuff that we did, like the podcasts that I did in 2005 you cannot listen to them today. They are so bad. The production quality is awful. There's crackling in the background, cars going by, and they're just terrible. But I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't gone through the process. So there's always a learning curve, and you just have to accept that before it becomes easy, it's hard. And everything is hard in the beginning because we don't know what we're doing. And after a while, it's like, oh, this is really easy. And that's the way it is. I love StreamYard that we're using right now. And in the beginning, using StreamYard, it was confusing. I wasn't sure and all the rest of it. And now it's just easy as easy can be. And I think it's a great tool, right? So if you're going to do video courses, for example, I would recommend, getting something like StreamYard and just record yourself through StreamYard and then edit the videos a little bit and put them up, and away you go. So there's lots of different skills that are required, and it's going to take you time to learn those, and you just have to persevere and do it, and you'll be rewarded.
All right, sir. Wonderful message. Thank you so much for your message. And we had the privilege of delving into the fascinating life journey and experiences of Mr. Scott, the podcast director and executive producer, the Elder Nomad Explorer. Mr. Scott, thank you so much for sharing your insights and stories with us. It's been an enlightening and inspiring conversation. Before we conclude, is there anything you'd like to say to our audience, or any upcoming projects or initiatives you'd like to share?
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And I think what I'd like to leave everybody with is take some time. We're always very, very busy. We're running here and there, and life gets away from us. And then we wake up one day and we say, I'm really unhappy with my life. But you've just spent the last 10 or 20 years building this life unconsciously or subconsciously. So I recommend, find a park, find a river, find a mountain, and spend a couple hours with a notepad. I always have I have a notebook, right? And I think it's better than putting it in your phone. And just write down what your goals are. What are your physical goals? What are your work goals? What are your emotional goals? What are your mental goals? What are your spiritual goals? And put them all down. And that they tend to be, when I say all those different things, it's like, are you getting enough exercise? What mental is, what do you want to learn? Emotional is, what are your relationships like? With your parents, with your brothers and sisters, with your significant others, with your friends? Are there areas where those could be improved? Or are you behaving in ways that hurt those relationships? And the spiritual can be religious, but it can also be community. Like, what are you contributing to your community? Are you volunteering? I don't know anybody who's unhappy who volunteers, because you're giving. When you give, I think, whether it's at a food bank or helping pets that are abandoned, or like whatever it could be, whatever you want to volunteer to do, you're helping other people, and that automatically gives you a good feeling, confidence, and because you're contributing, and we all want to contribute. So I think it's really important we take time to do those sort of things and decide, like, where do we want to go in our lives in those main areas. And that, you know, I think then you will live a life worth living and be happy and successful.
All right, sir. Great advice. Thank you so much for your advice. I really appreciate your time. I learned a lot of things from your interview. Thank you so much, sir, for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's also my pleasure. So bye. Have a wonderful day ahead.